Let's get started. Welcome everyone to today's webinar, Flying Smarter with ForeFlight, Tips and Tricks for Every Mission. In today's webinar, we will dive into the must-know tools that will make your VFR and IFR planning and flying even smoother. We'll look at our latest features, including the new FAA Cameras map layer. We will also demonstrate how to customize your ForeFlight preferences, utilize the Procedure Advisor for more situational awareness, and how to access ForeFlight's tools for education and learning resources, in addition to helping build your aviation community. Let's meet today's presenter. Alex, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Thanks, Keith. Alex Montgomery here. I am the Director of Product for Business Aviation at ForeFlight. I've been with ForeFlight for coming up on 9 years and have been flying for a little over 10 years. I'm a commercial instrument-rated pilot and advanced ground instructor, currently working on finishing up my CFI. I am a Mooney airplane owner, and my wife and I enjoy flying our little rocket ship all across the US, based here in Houston, Texas.
And I'm Keith Wagner, a member of the ForeFlight marketing team. I'm based in Seattle, Washington, and have my private and instrument ratings, and am currently working on my commercial certificate. Some housekeeping items before we begin. You can ask questions during today's webinar using Zoom's Q&A panel. We will take a few of the most popular questions at the end of the webinar. We also have a team standing by to answer the questions that come in. We tend to get more questions towards the end of our webinars, so we encourage you to ask your questions as soon as you think of them. Today's webinar is being recorded and will be available on our YouTube channel and our website. Last thing before we get started, I want to mention that we will be using a Performance Plus subscription in today's demo. Performance Plus is our highest tier subscription, but most of the features we'll demo today will be available to all customers. If you are unsure about what subscription level you have, you can check by selecting More in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, select Account, and check your current subscription as well as its expiration date. When we demo a feature that requires Pro Plus or Performance Plus, we will reflect that in the graphics on screen. With that, let's jump right in. Alex, take it away.
Awesome. Thanks, Keith. Let's start by talking about some tips and tricks for VFR local flying. So let's say we are flying around to a local airport and we're encountering a situation where a non-standard traffic pattern is used. So here in my local town of Houston, Texas Gulf Coast Airport, or Lima Bravo X-ray, has a right-hand pattern for runway 17. So being able to remind myself about this right-hand pattern and understand what I need to do to being able to enter it is super important for maintaining my situational awareness. One feature that ForeFlight has that can make this a little bit more useful, as well as helpful for drawing your attention to it, is by being able to add the traffic pattern directly to the map. To do this, I'm going to tap the flight plan drawer at the top, and then in the flight plan drawer, I'm going to tap on Procedure on the right-hand side. When I do this, I'll notice I have the option to tap on Traffic Pattern into the airport that I've selected in my flight plan. Inside of Traffic Pattern, I'm going to tap on runway 17, which is the runway that I'm expecting to land on. And when I do that, I'll be able to first see the pattern altitude at the top, which is pre-selected from the information we have for that airport, but I can make an adjustment should it be inaccurate. I can also go to the bottom and select my pattern entry. In this case, I'm going to go with the 45 for the downwind. When I do that, I'm going to get this nice little preview of what my pattern altitude and pattern entry are going to look like. And when I add this to my route, ForeFlight's going to not only draw that on the map, but it's going to give me a reminder of what my pattern altitude is and highlight the runway that I should be entering. Now, this is for situational awareness usage only. It is not to replace visual references when flying the traffic pattern. But for a non-standard pattern, it helps me remember to fly the right-hand side rather than the left-hand side. Let's talk about another tip and trick that is super helpful when you're flying around locally, and that is to customize the bottom tab bar into an in-flight flow. So to customize the tab bar, we're going to go to the More button in the right-hand side, and then in the More menu, we're going to click Edit Tab Order. When we do that, all of the tabs are going to become editable, and we can choose which item we want to be ahead of another item by clicking, holding, and dragging that item ahead of it. So let's think a little bit about what we're typically using when we are flying. For me, I use airports, maps, and I use the checklists the most. I have all of the checklists for my Mooney uploaded inside of ForeFlight. So I want to move checklists to be a little bit closer to airports and maps, so it's easy for me to get to it in the air. To do this, I can go to that checklist tab, push and hold on those 3 buttons, and then drag it up to the top right after maps. Another item I use all the time for VFR local flying, to being able to take notes or to being able to copy down the ATIS information, are my Scratchpads. So I'm going to move the Scratchpads up a little bit closer next to plates so that I can still easily access my taxi diagrams, or if I'm flying IFR, approach plates, and then being able to move into Scratchpads to being able to make the necessary notes. When I'm ready, I can click Save in the top right-hand corner. And when I do this, you'll notice that the tab bar automatically changes to the new order you've set. And now you have an order that works inside of your in-flight flow, and you can easily move from one object to the next with everything that you use most often right next to each other, making it a little bit more convenient for VFR local flying. If we go back to our flight, another useful feature is our glide advisor feature, because even when we're flying locally, we always want to have situational awareness of what's going on around us and where we could put the airplane down in the event of an emergency. We can turn on glide advisor by, on the maps page, tapping the settings icon in the top hand corner, and then in the resulting menu, scrolling down, looking for glide advisor underneath map overlays, and then toggling it on. You'll notice that when I do that, if I have my glide settings already configured on the aircraft, I get this green ring around the aircraft. And this is displaying the current glide range of the aircraft, taking into account forecasted winds aloft and even terrain. Here in Houston, we don't have as much terrain, so it's a relatively even circle. I can customize my glide settings by either tapping on the glide settings box here, or by going to aircraft, and then on my aircraft configuration, scrolling down to glide performance. And this is where, with the help of my POH, I can put in my best glide speed and what the expected glide ratio is for my aircraft. Once that's inputted, we then have a glide ring that is dynamically updating as we fly and giving us some quick situational awareness where, as we're planning on where we would put the aircraft down in the event of an emergency, we can quickly see how far we can glide at any given moment. Now you'll notice as we've gotten closer to Texas Gulf Coast here, there's another aircraft here. We've got November 148 Foxtrot hanging out at 625 feet. And one of the things that's helpful to understand is, well, what is that aircraft doing? Maybe we haven't heard on CTAF what the aircraft's intentions are. We have a feature called Traffic Breadcrumbs, where we're able to tap on an ADS-B traffic target and then see what that traffic target has been doing across the map in their breadcrumb. This looks like this at a different airport, where if I tap on 7136 Echo, I'm able to see that it is doing laps in the pattern at Papa Yankee Papa. And that's helpful information for me as I'm either overflying the pattern or entering it to know how much traffic there is at the airport. So next time you see an ADS-B traffic target on the map, try tapping on it, looking at those breadcrumbs, and then being able to formulate a plan. What is that traffic doing? Is it heading towards me? Is it in the pattern? And then you can make the appropriate adjustments afterwards. Let's go back to our flight. We talked a little bit about customizing the bottom tab bar, but another thing you can customize is the instrument bar. The instrument bar gives you lots of useful information when flying with ForeFlight, especially when flying locally VFR. We have our distance to our next waypoint, we have our estimated time en route, ground speed, even our magnetic track. All of this can be changed and tailored to what you find to be the most useful for the type of flying that you're doing. First, if you're not seeing the instrument bar, you can toggle it on or off at any time by clicking the little speed indicator on the top bar. By turning this on, you will then see the instrument bar and then be able to use it while you're flying. Let's say I want to change the GPS altitude. That's not something that I find to be very helpful to me with the kind of flying that I'm doing when I'm flying around locally. To change this, I can push and hold on the GPS altitude, and then I get a variety of instruments I can change this out to tailor the instrument bar for the information that I find to be most valuable. One feature that is super helpful to me, particularly when I'm flying local, is the descent to destination. The descent to destination instrument will give you the required feet per minute to reach the destination elevation at arrival. When I switch it to descent to destination, it gives me this handy call out that from my current altitude, if I maintain a 530 feet per minute rate, I will be able to make it down to the airport that I am landing at without any further changes. Another tip I have for flying locally, as well as even considering VFR cross-country flights, is to be able to customize all of the alerting that ForeFlight can do for the type of mission that you have and what you find to be the most valuable. ForeFlight has a tremendous amount of alerting that can draw your attention to important things that are occurring, such as there's aircraft on the runway that I'm about to take off on, or a traffic alert for another airborne aircraft I'm getting close to. All of this can be customized on the map by tapping on the setting cog at the top. In the settings menu, if you scroll down to the bottom, you'll notice this alerts section. And if we tap on alerts, we have the ability to customize all of the different alerts that ForeFlight offers. The first thing we can customize is we can choose whether to have all of the alerts be spoken out loud. So if you have your iPad or your iPhone paired to your noise canceling headset, or in my case, paired to my aircraft's intercom, I can have those alerts be spoken out loud so that I can hear them even over the sound of the engine. From there, we have the ability to customize our general alerts, such as our 500-foot alerts, cabin altitude, or runway proximity alerts, and customize alerts when it comes to airspace. Houston is near a Class Bravo airspace, so having airspace alerts on is extremely valuable for VFR local flying to ensure that we don't have an airspace incursion in inner airspace we haven't been cleared to enter. All of this can be customized for the type of flying that you find to be most valuable, and you can even customize traffic alerts at the bottom by choosing if you want to receive airborne traffic alerts, as well as traffic on the runway or traffic on short final. Customizing the alerts will give you the best situational awareness that you find useful for your type of flying. And I highly recommend that you do it so that ForeFlight can continue to serve as that helpful co-pilot at your side. Zooming a little bit out, let's talk about some more ways when flying locally, we can find excuses to fly. Because after all, as pilots, that's kind of what we're after, right? What's a good excuse to get in the air? Whether that's a good bite to eat, whether that's meeting up with a friend, or whether that's just doing some proficiency work like practicing maneuvers or pattern work. Another good excuse to fly is taking a look at what events are occurring around your area. And that is now inside of ForeFlight in the Discover tab. To access the Discover tab, I can tap on More in the bottom right-hand corner, and then choose Discover from the More menu. And when I do this, I'm going to get a wealth of information at my disposal. The first of which is I can go to and select various materials to learn more about ForeFlight in the education section. From here, I can look at videos and playlists that will give me quick tips about various things in ForeFlight, as well as feature focuses that dive deep into specific features, all organized from the very beginning on I'm getting started with ForeFlight to things like flying and navigation or flight planning. But I can also tap on events at the top, which will give me a map of all of the different events that are currently feeding into ForeFlight. Here we've partnered with, in this case, the EAA, where we're able to see a variety of EAA events here on the map. If I zoom a little bit closer into Houston, I can see some of these events are happening in my local airspace. Tapping on the 17 near Conroe at the top, it's going to break that down to being able to show me exactly what events are happening on Conroe. When I do that, I can then select one of these events to learn a little bit more about it. So maybe I select this IMC VMC club meeting because that's something I'm interested in attending. There, it will break down more information about the event, when it starts, when it ends, what the address is, as well as the contact, so that if I have any questions about attending that event, or I want to plan to attend, I have all of the information at my disposal. And that's a great excuse to fly, right? Get together, talk a little bit about IMC and the VMC, why it's important with other pilots, get to meet more people in aviation, and build my own community. Next up, let's talk a little bit about tips and tricks for cross-country flying. So continuing with our example, let's say we're flying from Sugar Land Regional in Houston to Uvalde, Texas, where there's a really great breakfast and lunch spot called Hangar 8. So the first thing that I can do here is I can get an idea of what my flight looks like. But I want to highlight a feature that I often see disabled when I'm talking with customers, and that's our aeronautical map. The aeronautical map is extremely valuable in being able to highlight and showcase different pieces of information about the map. That might be airspace, it might be airports, or it might be TFRs or NOTAMs. Let me show you a little bit about what this looks like. So first, let's check and make sure we have the aeronautical map enabled. We're going to tap on the layer selector in the top left-hand corner, and yep, aeronautical is blue, so we have the aeronautical map on. What would happen if we turned it off? If I turn this off, okay, now we're back to a sectional. If I asked you to point to and identify Alpha Romeo Mike, Wharton Regional, do you think you can do that easily from this view, or do you think you're probably going to have to zoom in to try to find it? Most of the time, you're probably going to have to zoom in. And if you spot it right away and are able to read it, you have better vision than me, and I am very impressed with you. If we go back and we turn the aeronautical map on, now it's much easier to find Alpha Romeo Mike. There it is, about a little bit to the right in the center. Let's do another example. Further along our route, we're getting close to San Antonio. So here's the sectional view with the aeronautical map off. If I go back and turn the aeronautical map on, look at how it's highlighted all of the airspace, like the class deltas that I would need to enter, as well as the class Charlies around San Antonio. This is super valuable for me planning a cross-country flight, needing to understand the different airspaces I'm going to come into contact with and make sure that I understand what I need to do to move through that airspace, as well as even the MOAs. Here, this Randolph 1A MOA and the altitudes of that MOA are clearly depicted, where on the sectional view, they were a little hard to find. So the aeronautical map is a very helpful tool to being able to identify all of the different things inside of the VFR sectional. And it can even be customized for your specific type of flying. We're talking about VFR cross-country flying right now. If I tap into the slider on the left-hand side, I can turn on or off different aeronautical map elements based off of what I find to be most useful. In a VFR cross-country, I probably don't need to see GPS nav aids. So I can tap on that little triangle that's currently highlighted and turn GPS nav aids off. That's cleaned my map up a little bit more. So I highly recommend using the aeronautical map and then customizing it for the type of flying that you're doing most often. It'll make it easier to interact with things like airports or airspace, and it'll make it easier to find and identify the airspace on side of the map. All of it is dynamic. So as you zoom in or zoom out, it will declutter itself appropriately to ensure the map is staying clean and streamlined for your flying. Let's go back to our cross country. So here, from Sugar Land to Uvalde, another feature, and one that we recently released for our pro users and our performance users, is a profile view. If we go to our profile view, if you're on a Pro Plus plan or above today, you're able to see airspace. But if you're on a Performance Plus plan or above today, you can then tap on airspace, tap on headwind or tailwind, and you can see your headwind or tailwind component broken down into that 2D view in profile view. This is super useful to being able to understand what the winds are doing and where the best winds are. In this case, I can see my best tailwinds are a little bit lower than the planned altitude I have. I'm planning for 6,500, which is giving me around a 5 to 8 knot tailwind. But if I go a little bit lower to 4,000 or 3,500, I can pick up a 12 to 14 knot tailwind. All of this is color-coded by what the winds are doing. This provides a super helpful view inside a profile view to better understand the winds, and it comes along if you pack the winds data when you're flying or are flying with an ADS-B receiver. At any point, I can go to a specific part of my route. Let's say I want to learn more about the airspace that is around Stinson or Kelly Field. I can use the 2-finger ruler on that particular section of the flight route. And when I do that, profile view is going to automatically update to just what is within that ruler. This is a great way to understand, hey, am I going to be above Stinson's airspace, or am I going to enter it and do I need to talk to someone? Particularly if you're flying around complex airspaces or MOAs, such as the Randolph MOA we highlighted earlier. This will give you an indication where you're at relative to that airspace, providing more situational awareness and better understanding of what you need to plan for ahead of time when you're executing your VFR cross country. Going back towards our original flight plan, we have departed from Sugar Land. We're heading a little closer, and we want to check to see what the weather is doing at Uvalde. There is an easy way to being able to check what the weather at Uvalde is doing if we have an ADS-B receiver like a Sentry on board, and that is to use the Airports tab. If I tap on Airports, I get this great option to being able to select maps and flights at the top. And when I do that, it's going to automatically pull the 2 airports I have entered in my flight plan on maps and show them the current weather to them, how old that weather is, as well as a quick snapshot at their base elevation and the frequencies needed to being able to operate in and out of that airport. So this is a great feature to have. With this, I can very quickly see, okay, what is the elevation? What is the pattern altitude? What are my frequencies? I can even tap on Runway to start getting an idea of, okay, which runway should I plan to land on? What are the winds doing? And all of this becomes a tap away from the maps page. I can very easily tap from maps back to airports to get this information at a glance. So instead of having to pan around or zoom around on the map, I can instead just one tap away go back to airports, and at a quick glance, I can see what the weather's doing, what the frequencies are, and which runway is going to be the optimal runway for my arrival. While I'm here, I might as well learn a little bit more about the airport. If I tap on the comments section in the top right-hand corner, we have now used AI to generate a summary of different pilot comments at the top, so I can quickly and easily get an idea of what I am to expect. This is based on pilot submitted comments. So I highly recommend get involved. When you have a great experience at an airport, please leave a comment. You can do that just by pressing that plus icon at the top right-hand side. And in the add comment box, you can tap in, hey, this was my experience at this airport. You know, the FBO was really clean. The people were friendly. There was lots of ramp space. It was easy to get in and out. There's a pothole in the taxiway. You might want to watch out. Those type of comments are extremely valuable to other pilots who are trying to make decisions about if they go to that airport or another airport. And all of that is now easily summarized for people who are reviewing those comments with AI at the top. Let's go back to our flight. So we're getting closer and closer to Uvalde, and now we have an understanding of what the winds are doing and how those winds are going to impact which runway we decide to land on. But at a distance, it's kind of hard to see what that runway orientation looks like. And there is a way that we can make that a little bit easier for ourselves. If we go back to that settings cog at the top, and then in the settings menu, we scroll down, we can turn on a feature called Extended Centerlines. When we in turn extended Centerlines on, they are going to draw on the map where the runways are extending out from the runway. And now it's much easier to see where 1.5 and 3.3 are and start planning my pattern altitude and pattern entry appropriately. From here, I can zoom in a little bit. And if I want to understand the lay of the land and how Uvalde is set up, and more importantly, what to look for, because I'm VFR, and sometimes it's really hard to spot an airport from a distance when ATC is asking you if you're on flight following, hey, report the airport in sight. You're trying to understand what to look for. One of the most helpful features in ForeFlight we have for that, available for our Performance Plus subscribers, is 3D view. If I tap on the airport and then tap on 3D view on the left-hand side, I'm going to get a 3D rendering of what the airport environment looks like. And this I can use in relationship to landmarks like the city or a major road or some of these fields. I can get an idea of where specifically I need to look to be able to identify the airport. I can also zoom in a little closer to the airport to get an understanding of what the airport layout looks like. Where is the restaurant on the field? Am I going to need to taxi to the right? Am I going to need to taxi to the left? And if I'm approaching it at night, I can use the day-night slider at the bottom where you see that moon to get an understanding and an idea of what the airport looks like at night, as well as what lighting system it has. This situational awareness is fantastic when you're flying local cross-country flights VFR so that you have an understanding of what you're looking for. particularly with airports that might be close together or might be kind of isolated where it's really hard to spot them in the day. The 3D imagery I just showed you does come along with pack. So if you pack before your flight, and I highly recommend please pack every time before you fly, this will be accessible to you at any moment during your flight by going to that airport and tapping on 3D view. All right, we're continuing along our flight. We're getting closer to Uvalde, and we've got some things on the map here. We have a lot of different types of airspace. We have some special use airspace. Let's say you wanted to learn more about this airspace, or you see a symbol that you don't recognize. One of the questions I get most frequently is, how do I pull up the legend for the VFR sectional? You can pull it up in ForeFlight, and you can pull it up right on the map. Let me show you how to do that. If we go back to our settings menu by clicking the settings cog at the top, and then we scroll down to under the map overlay section, we have this map touch action button. If we tap map touch action, we're going to be presented with 3 options. By default, it's set to no action, where touching the map doesn't do anything other than zoom, pan, or move you around, depending on how you've interacted with it. But if we change that to bring chart to front with legends, what it's going to do is it's going to work just like if you had taken the original sectional chart, you had laid it flat on a table and smoothed it all out. When you do that, that looks familiar. We've got the actual chart borders. And on the left-hand side, we have the same information we would have if we had the paper sectional, which includes the legends. So now I can zoom in to that section. I can read through the legend, identify what I have questions about, and be able to continue doing that while I have situational awareness to what's going on around me on side of the map. So in the state of Texas is a relatively big state, right? We kind of have a reputation for that. And as a big state, we have multiple sectionals to cover just the state of Texas. So this is great. I can see my San Antonio sectional and my San Antonio legend, but what if I need to switch to another one, maybe the Houston one? How would I do that? So you can do that by zooming back out. And then if you tap outside of the sectional bounds where we see that white line, maybe on the right-hand side here, it's going to switch you to the other sectional, just like if you had the 2 paper charts side by side and you moved one over the other one. So this provides an easy way to being able to move from sectional to sectional, see those VFR legends, and at any time you can turn it off by repeating the same steps we used to turn it back on. Clicking that settings cog, going down to the map overlays, map touch action, and turning it to no action. If we turn it back off, then we just get this general view of all of the maps blended together seamlessly and digitally. As we're flying VFR cross country, another piece of information that's really valuable for us is, what does the surrounding area look like? And what does the airport look like right now, like right this minute? We have an exciting new feature that we just released at ForeFlight for Pro Plus subscribers and above called Airport Cameras. To turn it on, we're going to tap on that layer selector in the top left-hand corner. And on the right side, we'll scroll down and tap on the cameras option. And when I do this, you'll notice the camera icon appearing on the map in various places where we have FAA camera feeds. Let's tap on the Albuquerque one. So we're going to zoom in to the Albuquerque airspace. There's some things to keep in mind here. Albuquerque gets lots of dust storms. There's lots of elevation, and there's some mountains. So getting an understanding of what the airport looks like right now. Is it overcast? Is it cloudy? Is it dusty? I can pull the METAR. What does that METAR translates to with a live view is now answered by using the cameras feature. If I tap on Desert Eagle where I see that camera icon, I'm going to then get the latest images from the airport as well as a timestamp on how old that image is. So from here, I can quickly see a few of those images. I can gauge, oh, okay, it looks like it's cloudy, but there's still some blue skies here. I can see some of the mountains, as well as the timestamp of how old they are, and then where the camera is looking from, north 15 degrees or east 85 degrees. If I tap on one of those, let's say the north 15 degree option, I'll then be presented with a more full screen version of that same camera view. And from here, I can easily switch from camera to camera. I can go from the north-facing view to the southwestern-facing view with a simple tap. I can also see from what is most live now, in this case 18 minutes old, to what does it look like on a clear day? What should I expect if I'm flying VFR maybe a different day when it's not as cloudy by using the latest to clear day slider in the top right-hand side? When I do this, I'm not only going to get that clear day image, I'm also going to get a notated image of things that's important to keep my situational awareness around while I'm flying, such as some of the peaks around the area. If I tap on the east-facing camera, I can then see very helpful information about the Sandia crest, that it's 10,680 feet, as well as the volcano that is almost 6,000 feet and a little bit closer to the airport. So the FAA Cameras integration inside of ForeFlight is very helpful when you're planning VFR cross countries. You want to get a better understanding of what does it look like right now at that airport, as well as what does the surrounding area look like. You can tap, pan around from all of those camera positions, and then see which airports currently support and have FAA cameras at by using the layer selector. Now let's talk a little bit about tips and tricks for IFR flying. Let's take the same flight route that we had before, going from Sugar Land to Uvalde, and let's imagine that we're IFR. So here we have an instrument flight built out, we've got our routing, we filed it, and part of this routing includes a departure, in this case, the Bourne 6 departure with the Whalen transition. Now, if you're using Jeppesen plates, one of the great features that Jeppesen had is that departure and arrival plates are georeferenced, and you can add them to the map. Let me show you how to do that. If we tap the Bourne 6 Whalen bubble here in the flight plan drawer, and then we tap show plate at the bottom, it's going to automatically add that plate right to the map. And then from here, I can zoom in with my expected route, superimpose on top of the plate, and get fantastic details about altitudes, headings. I can zoom in and read more about what the expectation for the departure is going to be for Sugar Land, minimums, all of that is available right on the map to me. So this is a fantastic feature and a reason why Jeppesen plates remain best in class for IFR use. Zooming back out to our flight, let's say we're flying along, we're getting close to San Antonio, and we hear those words. We really don't get super excited to hear, November 123 Alpha Bravo, advised when ready to copy hold instructions. Great, we're gonna get a hold. So my first reaction is I always copy hold instructions via Scratchpads, and that's one of the reasons why I wanna have Scratchpads in my in-flight tab bar flow. So if I tap on Scratchpads in the top bottom tab bar, I can then tap on new Scratchpad either at the bottom or by clicking the plus icon on the top, and then I'm gonna choose the hold template. And this makes it really easy to being able to quickly copy down hold instructions. By doing that, I'm going to input my hold instructions, in this case, hold east of the San Antonio VOR on a 270 radial, left turns at an altitude of 4,000 feet, expect further clearance at 2153 Zulu. Now that I have that written down, let me show you a really cool feature ForeFlight has to be able to insert that hold onto the map for Pro Plus subscribers and above. If I go back to Maps by tapping on the Maps icon, and then I tap on the San Antonio VOR, I have this option in the top right-hand bar to tap hold. When I do that, I can then copy the information I wrote down from the controller and read back in here to being able to have ForeFlight draw the hold directly on the map. So I'm going to go first to my radial, and I'm going to choose from 061, I'm going to put in 270. It's going to confirm hold east of San Antonio. Instead of standard turns, I'm going to choose non-standard turns and switch that over to right turns. And then I can input in my altitude, speed, and my EFC time directly here, which ForeFlight will show over the hold so that I have all of the information I need on the map without having to navigate away. Once all of that is done, I click Add to Route at the bottom. And then ForeFlight will insert the hold directly into my flight plan. And if I zoom in, I can get more information about that hold, as well as by tapping the two, I can get the notes that I entered, such as the EFC time and the altitude to hold at. This makes visualizing your hold entry much easier than trying to use it by visualizing the HSI or other methods. I can just look at the map and maintain my situational awareness of what other traffic is doing relative to me and start planning my hold entry appropriately. All right, we've been holding, the controller came back on and cleared us back to San Antonio. So let's keep moving forward. As I'm getting closer to Uvalde, I need to start planning my approach. So to do this, I'm going to go back to the flight plan editor, and then I'm going to go to procedure in the right-hand side, tap approach, and then select which approach I'm planning to fly. In this case, the RNAV 33. As I'm planning the RNAV 33, I'm going to select FICFI as my initial approach fix. And when I do that, if I am on a Performance Plus subscription plan, I have the ability to add my minimums. And this is super valuable because it will not only show the minimums inside of the flight plan drawer, it'll also display them directly on the map. And that way, I'm not having to double check things. I'm not having to pull the approach plate back up multiple times to remember what my minimums are. I can maintain my situational awareness while flying the approach by having the minimums right there on the map. So in this case, I'm going to choose the LNAV minimums. And when I do that and click Add to Route, it'll then see that not only are the altitudes for the various transitions added to the aeronautical map, but you'll notice the runway 33 has my 1,380-foot minimums right there written out for me, making ForeFlight a more useful tool when you're flying IFR and needing to shoot an approach into an airport. And that's what I have to share today. Keith, back to you for questions.
Excellent. Thank you so much again, Alex, for sharing all of your insights with us today. Really great information. I want to get started with the Q&A here by answering a question that came up earlier in the webinar. On the descent to destination option, what specific altitude is Procedure Advisor calculating the descent to?
Thanks, Keith. That's a great question. So the altitude that the descent to destination advisor instrument is telling you is the field elevation. So it's not pattern elevation, it's the field elevation of the airport that you are heading to.
Great. And I remember when we had discussed that in the pre-show ahead of today's webinar, you had a trick about planning your descent. So you're not exactly planning directly to that field elevation, but kind of have a bit of a rule of thumb, correct?
Yeah, so a rule of thumb that I use personally when I'm flying is about 400 to 450 feet a minute. Once it reads that, go ahead and start your descent at 500 feet per minute. And what you'll find is you will hit pattern altitude right about that 1 mile away from the airport mark, which is where you want to be when you're entering the pattern.
Perfect. Thank you. That sounds like someone who's got their Mooney perfectly dialed in. A couple questions came in earlier about traffic breadcrumbs. I was curious, can you elaborate on traffic breadcrumbs?
Absolutely. So like we talked about, traffic breadcrumbs are a super handy feature to being able to understand what the traffic around you is doing. I think we had some folks trying to use this live with our internet traffic, which is another valuable tool when you're looking at things on the ground in the pre-flight scenario. But internet traffic does not currently support traffic breadcrumbs. So to use this feature, you will need to be connected to an ADS-B source like a Sentry and use our ADS-B traffic. So try it the next time you fly.
Thank you, Alex. And another great question came in about using ForeFlight for night flying. I know night flying is something that is so enjoyable. It's clear, it's calm. Radios are usually a little bit more quiet. So how can ForeFlight help enhance that night flying experience?
Oh, that's a great question, whoever asked that. Night flying is some of my favorite flying to do, specifically the flying around sunset. Let me share my screen real quick and show you a couple of tips that I have. Okay, so here we are. We've got the flight that we've been talking about. So one thing that's really helpful when anytime we're talking about night flying is how can I make sure I'm protecting my night vision? And ForeFlight has some great features to do that. Let me show you a few of them. The first one is that I can change the theme of the map to a darker theme, which will help both protect my night vision and make it easier for me to see things at night. So if I tap that settings cog on the top hand part of the maps page, and then under map theme, I can switch this from light to dark. And when I do that, you'll notice how everything has become much darker, and this will help protect that night vision by not having those really bright colors kind of in your face. Extending this a little bit is, let's say that as we're getting close to Uvalde, we're trying to get familiar with the airport layout. Maybe we've pulled up the airport diagram. And most airport diagrams, you know, it's a digital piece of paper, right? So it's based on a bright white background. And if there's one thing to quickly destroy your night vision at night, it's opening something that has a bright white background. So one thing we can do is if I go to plates here, I've got the Uvalde airport diagram up. I can tap on the settings icon on plates and I can tap on it, invert plate colors. And when I do this, and I'm going to send this to the map here real quick, you'll notice that it has inverted the colors of the plate to now, instead of showing a bright white background, to showing a black background. And this is another fantastic night feature to use to protect your night vision. One other thing, less on the night vision, but more of a peace of mind and a safety element, especially if you're using Glide Advisor, is to keep track of the interstates and the major highways that you're flying off of. So see here with Hondo, we've got, I believe this is I-10 right here going through the city. You can easily see where those lit areas are on the aeronautical map and where the major highways are. And that's really helpful to navigating at night. Last thing I'm going to cover, and I talked a little bit about this, but just as a reminder to help familiarize yourself with the airport's lighting environment and what it's going to look like from a distance at night, which oftentimes can be really tricky, particularly with airports that are right next to each other. You can tap on the airport, tap on 3D view, and then tap on that moon in the bottom right-hand side. This is available on our Performance Plus plans. And you're going to get that 3D depiction of what the airport looks like at night and its lighting system. And we even have some cool little effects like being able to see the starry screen up at the top.
Excellent. And yes, that is super helpful, especially if you're coming into if you're flying at night. I found in a city environment, and maybe there's a NOTAM because the rotating beacon is out of service and you need to try to find that airport. Or think about, like you said, there are two airports close to each other and you have to see which one is which, even if their runways have a similar layout. So, all safety enhancing situational awareness tools that I love to fly with, and I'm really glad you're able to share them here. Well, with that, I wanted to say thank you, everyone, so much for joining today's webinar. We have a few more of these scheduled, and you can find more information about our upcoming webinars at foreflight.com/webinars. And lastly, this webinar is being recorded and will be available. We're going to send out an email with the recording to everyone who registered for this webinar, and you can also find it on YouTube, on our YouTube channel. With that, I also want to say, Alex, thank you so much for sharing all of your insights, and best of luck with your upcoming CFI check ride as well. I want to say thank you to the ForeFlight staff who have been working diligently behind the scenes to answer all the questions that came in. And lastly, I want to thank all of you, our viewers, who took time out of your day to learn more about ForeFlight. So we look forward to meeting all of you next month at EAA AirVenture in beautiful Oshkosh, Wisconsin. And until next time, safe and smooth and happy flying, everyone.